So many beautiful knitting patterns are released each week on Ravelry that it's sometimes hard to keep track. I've gone through some of the most popular and exciting patterns released since the new year, and I'm excited to share them with you. So stick around to find your next cast on. Hello and welcome to Hattie Knits Along. My name's Allison, but my friends call me Hattie, and I'm a knitter living in the Pacific Northwest. On this channel, I like to talk about all things knitting, what I'm working on, what you're working on, and what we are currently nerding out about. So if that sounds like something you're into, I hope you subscribe so you never miss a video. This week I found 10 new patterns released in 2026, so released in January or February, and I am going to break them down for you. The patterns range from shawls to garments and even a pair of mittens and socks. So if any of those sound interesting to you, please stick around and let's dive right in. The first pattern I want to talk about is the Creativity Shawl by Tori Yu of Tori Knits NYC. This pattern has been all over my social media, and for good reason. It is just a really beautiful, elongated, triangular shawl, and it's designed for any weight, any gauge of yarn. Tori says, the Creativity Shawl is an elongated shawl designed to celebrate and embrace creativity, featuring a two-color textured stripe pattern and polished edges. This pattern is designed to be a knit at your own gauge, using any yarn weight from fingering to worsted. Dive into your stash to create your own Creativity Shawl. Use hand-spun or color-changing or variegated yarn as one of the yarns to see the colors come to life throughout the finished piece. This shawl is so easy to wear and to love. This pattern is $8 on Ravelry, and I think that it would be a really fun stash buster shawl. But also, if you are a hand spinner, I think this is a great way to highlight your hand spun yarn. Tori is a hand spinner, and so I think she's always looking for patterns to use some of that hand spun yarn in, and this one really lets it shine. There's also a Creativity cowl, and she actually offers a bundle. If you buy the Creativity Shawl and the cowl at the same time, you'll get 50% off of the cowl, I think, of the cowl pattern. And the cowl is like kind of one of those triangular cowls that's seamed in the back. Honestly, it's not my favorite look. I know a lot of people make those like triangular bandana shaped cowls. Like Andrea Mallory has a whole bunch of them. They're just really not my vibe, but I do love the shawl version of the Creativity, and I think it really does let the yarn shine with that textured pattern. So yeah, you can use any weight yarn, and of course she has two different sizes listed in the pattern, but depending on the gauge you knit with the yarn you choose, it would be different sizes and different widths and things like that. So you could play around with it. I would say that if you're going to use multiple yarns, you should probably have the same weight yarn for both of the yarns, instead of mixing it up. That would be awkward to have like a fingering weight and a worsted weight. So when she says any gauge, she means like, yeah, you want the two contrasting colors to be the same weight. That's all I have to say about that one. I think it's very beautiful. The next pattern on my list is Apricity, which means apple flower in Danish, and that is a pattern by Clara Eggers. Apricity, Danish for apple flower, is a vibrant colorwork sweater inspired by those magical spring months when the apple trees blossom. It is worked from the bottom up and has a relaxed fit. This sweater is actually published in the 52 Weeks of Sweaters by Lina. It's a pattern book that you can buy, and I believe 52 Weeks of Sweaters means it has 52 sweater patterns in it, which is a great deal if you're buying that book. So right now you cannot purchase this as a singular pattern, but I do think that Lina publishing books are really great things to have. I have the 52 Weeks of Socks. They have multiple... I'm looking, this is where I keep my books. They have multiple versions of that book, different volumes of it. So I believe this was the first year that they released a 52 weeks of sweaters though. So that's a really good deal to have a whole book of that many patterns. And the book is printed in Finnish and English. So, yeah, if you are happen to be in Finland, hello, welcome to my channel. But also, yeah, you can find that linas in Finland. So this pattern is written for a lace and a DK weight to be held together to get a worsted weight gauge. So some sort of fluffy yarn is usually the lace weight, and then a DK weight of a more structured yarn to hold together. There's many different, there's I think 3 different colors in this sweater. This sweater is worked from the bottom up in all over stranded color work. The body and sleeves begin with 1x1 rib and are worked separately, after which the parts are joined and the yoke is worked in the round with raglan decreases. After the ribbed cuffs and an initial increase, the wide sleeves are worked straight. The shaping of the neckline is done by binding off the center neckline stitches and then binding off stitches at the beginning of each row while continuing the raglan decreases. Once the neckline is shaped, the remaining stitches are bound off and new stitches are picked up along the neckline for a folded ribbed neckband. So it's a very interesting construction, which I think would be a cool thing to do, especially if you've knit color work before. This would be a cool way to kind of level up your color work game by doing this bottom up construction with the raglan decreases instead of increases. I once knit the poly cardigan, which I think might be a similar construction, except for that it is knit flat because it's a cardigan. This is joined and knit in the round for the yoke, so that is a little bit different. But that poly cardigan, you did knit the sleeves separately, and then you attach them slowly by doing the raglan decreases as you went up. So I believe this would be a very similar construction to that, except for in the round and with lots of color work. I think this sweater is really beautiful, and I'm excited to see people's interpretations of the color work scheme. The next pattern on my list are the Waystone Light Mitts by Alicia Plummer of Little Plum Knits. These are just some really short fingerless mitts, but what's really cool about them is that they are knit with brioche stitch. So this is a very small and simple project. Most people have probably knit fingerless mitts before. So if you're intimidated by brioche, this would be a great entry into trying it out without a lot of commitment to a larger project. Alicia says the Waystone Mitts Light are fingering weight version of the original Waystone Mitts. They are fully reversible and feature a clean geometric thumb gusset, specially tailored to be worn on either hand, facing either way. A forgiving, stretchy fabric makes them extra cozy and ups the squish factor without the technical difficulty of full-blown brioche. This is an excellent entry-level pattern for learning this cozy fabric. Have you always wanted to learn brioche but find it intimidating? These mitts are worked in the round from the bottom up. They incorporate 2 brioche moves, but no brioche increases or decreases, and are very accessible. They are our ideal beginner brioche pattern. Please weave in ends very carefully as they are fully reversible. Especially the fact that there are no brioche increases or decreases, this definitely makes it an easy pattern. I saw something that she posted on Instagram and she was like, do you know how to knit? Do you know how to purl? Do you know how to yarn over? You can do brioche. Like basically that's all that it takes. It looks very intimidating, but you can get into a rhythm with brioche just as simply as you can with knitting stockinette or garter stitch. So I highly recommend trying these out. The pattern is $7 on Ravelry. It's a fingering weight gauge. I'm sure you have a ball of sock yarn laying around that you don't know what to do with. This would be a great thing to use it for. And there are 3 different sizes for this pattern. So you can fit lots of different people. You can make them up as gifts or just for yourself. Make some that match all your outfits. Being fingering weight and the lighter version of her Waystone Mitts, they are also pretty versatile in terms of when you can wear them. Wear them throughout spring before it gets warm, but you know, when you don't need full on thick mittens. So yeah, check out that pattern. The next pattern on my list is the Frankie Blouse by Petite Knit. I haven't talked about a ton of Petite Knit patterns in the past because I kind of feel like she's very popular already, and she doesn't really need any support in me boosting her on my channel. But I'm highlighting this blouse in particular because I've noticed a little bit of a trend where designers are taking popular patterns and kind of revamping them into lighter versions or slightly different versions of them to kind of appeal to a broader audience. So there already is a Frankie sweater, and the Frankie sweater came out back in October. It's a similar gauge of DK weight, but it's not knit with anything fuzzy. It's just like a straight DK yarn, and so it's more of a classic sweater look. It's a striped sweater and also has like a more substantial fabric. The Frankie blouse that just came out is knit with 2 strands of mohair held together. So this is also a striped sweater, but 2 strands of mohair, even though it's a DK weight gauge, is a super different fabric than 1 strand of DK is. So I think this makes it a more unique pattern and elevated pattern, because a nice mohair blouse is going to be lightweight, maybe a little pricey, a little fancy looking, but you know, a special occasion kind of blouse. It's as opposed to the Frankie sweater, which is just like a wardrobe staple striped sweater kind of a look. Petite Knit says the Frankie blouse is worked from the top down with raglan increases on the yoke. Short rows are worked along the back of the neck to shape the neckline. The sleeves are worked in the round and double pointed needles on double pointed needles or on circular needle. The Frankie blouse is worked with narrow stripes, 2 strands of lace weight held together to make DK weight gauge. There are 10 different sizes for the sweater, ranging from a 29.5-inch bust to a 59-inch bust, and she calls for 0 to 2 inches of positive ease. So this is going to be a more form-fitting sweater than, it's not like a big boxy sweater, which makes sense for the fabric that you're making it out of. The next pattern on my list is the Rust and Rhythm Bandana by Anna Huesman. This one I actually stumbled upon on Ravelry as I was researching this episode, and I had never heard of it before, but it really piqued my interest. Anna Huesman is an intarsia designer. I mean, I think she designs other things too, but she does a lot of intarsia designs, and intarsia is on my list. If you saw my last video, I'll link it up here, about my Make 9. I am hoping to make an intarsia sweater this year. And intarsia is a way of doing color work that is not stranded. So you could do more blocks of color without having long floats in between. This pattern is actually a free pattern from Hobby, and Hobby is a Danish yarn company. So that's really cool. She has other Rust and Rhythm patterns that are also free on Hobby, so check those out. But I really like the shape of the Rust and Rhythm bandana. It's also that kind of elongated triangle look. Here, I'll read what she says about it. The Rust and Rhythm bandana is a playful triangular scarf which combines a 4x2 garter stitch rib with the intarsia technique to create bold and graphical shapes. The pattern includes step-by-step instructions for the intarsia join, as well as detailed written instructions on how to increase and decrease within the garter stitch rib pattern. The bandana is a fun way to play with color combinations and color placement, as well as exploring the intarsia technique further. The combination of intarsia and the garter stitch rib pattern adds interesting texture to the graphical shapes. I think this, especially because I haven't looked at the pattern and it's free, so I should download it. But I think especially because it's a free pattern from Hobby, they are hoping to make it like really accessible to all levels of knitters. And so if you are interested in learning intarsia, this might be a great way to start. In fact, I might look at it if I have the right yarn for it. It might be a fun way to try it out before I dive into a full sweater's worth of intarsia. And I like that it's a garter stitch rib knit, so you don't have to think too hard about the stitches that you're doing, but you can focus more on your joins with your intarsia. It is a really cool yarn. She uses 3 strands of lace weight held together, so it gives it a thicker structure, but it's ultra fuzzy and probably very warm. So I think that would be a really fun thing to knit. She uses 4 different shades in the sweater. And yeah, there's also a Rust and Rhythm scarf and a bonnet, which is like kind of like a hood. If you've seen like the Sophie hood, it's a similar shape to that, but it still has this like graphical intarsia design on it, which is really neat. The scarf is really long. I saw a picture of her like standing on a 2nd floor balcony and like holding it down. So that would be more of a commitment, I think, than the bandana. I think the bandana is a really great jumping off point. The next pattern on my list is the Rosie Yoke blouse by Lynette. Now you've probably been seeing quite a few Lynette patterns pop up on your social media feeds. One of the more popular ones I've seen, especially on TikTok, is the porcelain sweater. That is a beautiful colorwork sweater that utilizes like a blue and white scheme. And honestly, that's what I've seen it done the most in, because it really does give it that porcelain vibe. I haven't seen it veer off from that color scheme too much. The Rosie sweater, I think it's called the Rosie sweater. You could do in, I've seen in lots of different colors. That's like an all over rose motif colorwork sweater. But the Rosie Yoke blouse is a lighter weight gauge, and it's only got one part of the colorwork motif, and it's just here in the yoke. So if you really like the look of the Rosie sweater, but you don't want to do a whole sweater's worth of color work, I think this is a great way to introduce that, just the yoke part. And again, this is going off of the similar theme that I talked about with the petite knit blouse, of like kind of taking a popular pattern and tweaking it a little bit to make it something new and different, but also, you know, jumping off of this is a popular pattern. The Rosie Yoke blouse is worked from the top down with the rose border knitted into the circular yoke. The rest of the sweater is kept simple, worked in stockinette stitch with ribbed edges. This sweater is 50 Danish kroners. I did not convert that, but I imagine it's probably around $6 or $7. There are 10 sizes available, and she calls for 6.25 inches of positive ease. But actually the sweater that's pictured in that she's modeling is 7.75 inches of positive ease. That's a bigger difference. So you have to play around and see what works for your bust size. Oh, and the pattern is written in English, Danish, German, Norwegian, and Swedish. So that's pretty neat that it comes in so many different languages. It is a fingering and lace weight held together to make a DK weight gauge. So again, like I said, it's a little bit of a lighter weight gauge Then the Rosie sweater, which I didn't write down what the Rosie sweater gauge is, but I'm going to guess it's around a worsted or Aran weight. There's actually a Rosie Yoke sweater too. So there's the Rosie sweater, which is the all over color work. And then there's the Rosie Yoke sweater, which is just in the yoke, but the thicker gauge. And then there's the Rosie Yoke blouse, which is the thinner gauge and the smaller gauge and the color work just in the yoke. And then the porcelain sweater I talked about already. The next pattern on my list is the Herringbone Cardigan by Amy Christoffers of Savory Knitting. If you've been watching this channel, you know I'm a fan of Savory Knitting and all of her patterns. I talked about the poly cardigan earlier in this episode, and she designed that. So I really do love all of her patterns, especially the pressed flowers patterns. Those are beautiful. The herringbone cardigan is worked from the top down. The cardigan begins by casting on the neck back, working shoulder shaping, and then down to the underarm. The fronts are picked up from the shoulders and worked down to match the back. The fronts and back are then joined and worked in one piece to the end. The front and back feature a cable detail, and the fronts each have a Gansey-inspired knit purl textured herringbone motif. The cable patterns are written out and the herringbone patterns are charted. So this gives you a little bit of texture from knits and purls, but also some fun cables for the front and back features. And so I think it's got a little bit of everything and gives it a very classic cardigan look. It's an Aran weight gauge, and she actually used Peace Fleece worsted, which in the name it says it's a worsted gauge, but I think because it's 75% Rambouillet, Navajo Rambouillet, and 25% mohair, it blooms quite a bit, so you could get an Aran weight gauge with the worsted weight yarn. So something thick and fuzzy and bouncy would be beautiful, something that shows off the cool texture. And she used this really wonderful red color, which just makes it all pop and show up in my Ravelry feed very nicely. There are 10 sizes of this pattern, and she actually, this is a big range, but she says 4 to 12 inches of positive ease. So I think she's saying you could really do what you want with this cardigan. It's a cardigan, so if you want it to be kind of a boxy fit over a sweater or over a dress or something, you might want more positive ease. But if you want it to be more fitted and, you know, look more polished, then you might go for the lower end of the positive ease. The pattern is $7 on Ravelry. The next pattern on my list is the Ariundle sweater by Rebecca Clow. I don't know if I am saying that right, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But this sweater is a pattern by Rebecca Clow. She's Crayabea on YouTube and Instagram, so I'm sure you have seen her a lot in your feed. Ariundle is a top-down circular yoke sweater with an intricate textured yoke made up of knits, purls, and crossed stitches. There are short rows worked into the ribbing at the neckline, and the yoke is finished with raglan shaping to give the perfect fit. Although it looks complex, the yoke is very simple to work, and the yoke is written out line by line. It does look very complex. It looks like a really cool cabled pattern, but it's just made up of knits and purls and then a few like cross stitches. When she says cross stitches, I believe she's meaning like it's like a cable, but it's only 2 stitches crossing, so you don't have to worry about having like a 4x4 cable or something bigger like that. And then it gives this really cool look in the yoke. Something that I've seen similar things from, like I think Sari Nornland has a similar yoke sweater, but Rebecca Clow's really great at making her pattern super size inclusive and offering lots of different options. This is a 7 Great British pounds, so I'm not sure what the conversion rate is to US dollars, but it's not that expensive. It's 10 sizes and 2 to 6 inches of positive ease is recommended. It's a DK weight gauge, and I believe she just holds just one strand of yarn to get that gauge. The pattern is written and not charted, which might turn some people off, or it might make it easier for some people who don't actually feel comfortable with charts. I think if you really want to chart, it's kind of easy to take the written instructions and chart it out yourself if that's something that's really important to you. But for somebody who is newer to knitting and wants to try something like this very textured, almost cabled pattern, having it written out line by line might be nice. You could just cross it off as you go along, and you don't have to worry about trying to interpret a chart at the same time that you're doing a new technique. So I could see why she would just have it written out. She did use just one strand of Ritual Dyes Marona, which is 100% Cormo and a DK weight, and I love Ritual Dyes. She also used West Yorkshire Spinners BFL, and so she used these like singular breed yarns like the BFL and the Cormo. And I think what's nice about using those one singular breed yarns is that you usually get a really good stitch definition in your knitting, and with such a beautiful textured yoke, you really want to have that nice stitch definition. So that's pretty neat. The next pattern on my list is one that just came out last week. It's called Frost Lines by Andrea Mallory, and I really like this sweater. I haven't always been in love with what Andrea Mallory's been releasing recently. I know she knit the Everyday Cardigan, and I just really didn't like the style of that cardigan. But the Frost Lines is a very classic fitting cardigan. The one thing that she does a little bit differently with it is that she has two different lengths that you could knit it to. So there's a cropped length and then there's a full length. And of course you could always, add or take away length to any sweater when you're knitting it. But I think what's nice when it's written into the pattern is that you could really get a better feel of how much yarn you need when it's written out that way, instead of trying to guess based off of what you think you want to knit. So she was saying that she really needed a cropped cardigan in her wardrobe because she's wearing a lot of high-waisted pants recently. I wear a lot of high-waisted pants, so I could see having a cropped cardigan in my wardrobe would be very handy. The classic stripes make it go with anything, and I really love what she did with her sample with there's 3 colors in the sample, and it's 1 super high contrast and then 2 that are lower contrast with each other. So there's like a blue and a lavender and then a red. And I just love the way that works out. When I looked at it from afar, I thought it was just 2 colors. But then when I got closer, I was like, oh no, that's 3 different stripes. And that just looks really neat. I love the way that she chose to do that. There's also been lots of testers with this pattern, and I like all of theirs too. Of course, she knit it in my favorite yarn, which is Fluff by the Wandering Flock. This yarn I knit the jaunty shawl with a few weeks ago, and I would love to have a full sweater made out of this yarn. It would not be a cheap sweater. I think it would be quite expensive. I didn't look up the yarn quantities needed for the sweater if you're using Fluff, but it would be a really nice sweater to wear. It would feel so good next to skin. It would be lightweight, but very warm. And the colors that Wandering Flock can make are just beautiful. So you would have lots of choices of really beautiful colors. So if you're going to make the frost lines, I would recommend looking at Fluff and seeing if it fits in your budget to make it out of that yarn, because I think it would really be worth it. This is what Andrea Mallory says. This is a $9 pattern on Ravelry, and she says soft fluffy yarn, playful stripes, and buttons that offer a pop of color are just the ingredients to lift us out of the winter doldrums. Recently I found all my cardigans to be just a bit too long for a lot of my trousers, so I opted for a sweet cropped length to pair with the whimsical halo of the yarn. You can also opt to go a few inches longer for the full length version. Either way, I hope this cardi brings you some brightness. The sweater is worked from the top down seamlessly. The sleeves set are put on hold while the body is finished and then returned to the needle. You can, of course, modify it to have any length body or sleeves. Do take into account that modifications will affect the yardage required, and if length is added to the body, you may want to add an extra button or buttonhole. There are 10 sizes available for this pattern, and she recommends about 5 inches of positive ease, which is just like right in the middle coziness. Like, it's not going to be a super boxy fit. It's not going to be super fitted. It's just going to be a very versatile cardigan to wear with lots of different outfits. The next pattern on my list are the Apricity socks by Summer Lee. Gotta have a sock pattern on my list, right? Because I do love knitting socks. These are a colorwork sock. The pattern is $5 on Ravelry, and she says the Apricity socks are my love letter to winter, to rest, to sleeping trees and golden sunsets, to burrowing deep with books and knitting and hot frothy lattes, and listening to sad old country songs while watching for the return of the birds. Knit cuff down, these colorwork socks have an easy to memorize chart. And with only 2 colors, you won't have too many ends to weave in. This is also written interestingly for 4 sizes, but to get the different sizes, you use different size needles, which I think is interesting. So I imagine she has 2 different charts. One chart for small, medium, and one chart for large, extra large. And then if you're knitting the size small, you use a size 1 needle. If a size medium, you use a size 2 needle to get a slightly different gauge so that it will fit your foot a little bit better, and vice versa for the large and extra large. So I think that's an interesting way to size colorwork socks, because when you have a very specific motif, it would be hard to make it bigger or smaller with the stitch counts. So I think that's a cool way to do that. Yeah, I love knitting colorwork socks. I believed these had an afterthought heel. I didn't write it down, but I believe that they do. And yeah, just really cute wintry pair of socks. I also wanted to do a bonus pattern because who doesn't like bonus things? I saw the lovely hearts. Yeah, the lovely heart socks by Stone Knits. And Stone Knits, or Charlotte Stone, she is just the master at colorwork socks. She has so many different pairs, and she likes to release seasonal ones. So these are her Valentine's socks for this year. They are super cute, and I like that she suggests you like swapping the different colors, the main color and the contrast color for the 2 socks, so they can be coordinating but like not exactly the same. She says, what's the point of life without love? Whether it's romantic, platonic, or even your cat. A time to show gratitude for the people that help lift you up in life. I am delighted to share with you this new Valentine sock designed to help to add some joy to your colorwork sock drawer. These lovely heart socks use both horizontal and vertical stripes to accentuate the hearts, making the pattern easy to knit and remember, with just 2 colors and no long floats. Choose some sock yarn in 3 of your favorite colors, not necessarily red and pink. Knit each sock in alternative colors if desired to help avoid any second sock syndrome. Knit from the top down, these socks have a short row heel and a fun knit stranded colorwork hearts and stripes pattern in 3 different stitch counts. The colorwork section is knit using only 2 colors and is easy to memorize, repeating pattern throughout the leg and foot of socks. This pattern is $4.99 Swiss francs, which I was kind of surprised that it's listed in Swiss francs. So I Googled what the conversion rate of that is, and it's about $6.50 in US 3 sizes, and yeah, the short row heel. So yeah, if you want to cast on a cute pair of Valentine socks before the holiday or after the holiday, anytime are good for heart-shaped socks. I think this would be a great pattern to use. She is offering a 25% off discount until Valentine's Day, so if I get this video edited and posted before Valentine's Day, go ahead and go and check out that pattern for 25% off. And the coupon code is Valentine's at checkout. Well, there we go. 11 new patterns to cast on this winter. I hope you found some inspiration in this video. I did make a bundle on Ravelry, and you could find the link for it below. I included a few other patterns that have caught my eye this year in that bundle. But let me know if I missed any of your favorites that have been released so far this year. Thank you so much for watching. Happy knitting. Bye.